Mr. Kusano, spring wage negotiations have gone into full swing this year against the backdrop of recent economic recovery trends. What are your basic demands and policies in regards to the negotiations?
Despite the ongoing steady economic recovery and the increasing number of firms enjoying corporate growth, workers' livelihood have not improved. Major companies are expected to post profits for the third consecutive year as they settle their accounts for the fiscal year. In fact, they will likely post record operating profits in the past decade. Nonetheless, disposable income of workers has declined for 6 straight years since 1998. The negotiations, therefore, must assume macroeconomic significance because the economy will hinge on whether firms can distribute their new profits to their workers to bolster consumer spending. Furthermore, we are seeing in recent years a rapid expansion of salary gap between firms and workers alike. By workers, we mean permanent and non-permanent workers. Japan is no longer a society made up entirely of the middle class, but becoming rather an polarized one. The spring labor negotiations for 2005 will focus on improving the distribution of profits and bridging the disparity to rectify the inequities of the macroeconomy that have developed in the past several years.
This year, we're seeing firms enjoying growth that have expressed readiness to oblige for wage hikes. At the same time, there are yet labor unions bustling companies that have decided to shelve demands for a uniform basic wage increase. How do you see these points?
We do understand that some industries and firms are doing better than others. They, after all, in the midst of a macroeconomic recovery, and our economy has been at a critical stage. Now, people tend to take notice only of our monthly wage increase demands when we launch our annual spring labor negotiations, when in fact trade unions are seeking for different ways to have fruits of corporation growth be distributed to the workers. There are trade unions that did not work on demanding a basic pay raise this time, but this is because they have shifted their demand to higher lump sum payments, or cutting back on working hours, or push for extension of retirement age, and so on. We have called on trade unions to be more aware of their social responsibilities and to demand for a reasonable distribution of corporate earnings while taking into account the working conditions and circumstances surrounding permanent and non-permanent employees alike. We have requested that labor unions of flourishing firms to step up their demands to raise the minimum standard of workers and bridge disparity among workers. There are a number of reasons why the gap has widened, and by no means are these issues easy to resolve. This is, for example, the salary gap between the parent and the group's subsidiaries or contractors and so forth. A system that protects part-time and temporary workers is also not fully in peace. I believe that there is a need for us to focus on rectifying the fundamental flaws of our society through our spring wage negotiations. It is no longer about asking for wage hikes among full-time employees within the framework of enterprises.
That's right. Labor unions have shifted their attention to improving working conditions and securing employment and so forth. Where do you place your utmost priority for this spring management labor wage talks?
There are three. One, again, is rectifying the disparity so that corporate profits are evenly distributed, determined to take a firm step to demonstrate support for employees of small and medium-sized companies. We have established a uniform criteria for wage increase on their behalf. We have called for a 500 yen increase on the year to 5,700 yen. For part-time workers, we are encouraging a minimum rise of 10 yen or above per hour. Number two, there is a need to establish work rules. In particular, there is an urgent need to address workers working overtime without being paid for their services. This practice must be eradicated. Labor Standards Inspection Offices last year cracked down on double the number of unpaid overtime workers. Rengo is constantly alerted by mail and through phone calls of the unduty practice, such as companies are rewriting the workers' work records. We hope to launch a major campaign to end this shady practice with an eye on filing complaints against major offenders. Thirdly, we will also step up a counter-offensive against government plans to have workers shoulder the increasing financial burden of rising pension premiums as a result of recent social security reforms and abolition of fixed trade reduction for income and residential taxes. Our nation's financial difficulties are being passed on the workers. Lawmakers are not working to drastically reform Japan's social security systems and so forth, but rather trying to make ends meet by increasing taxes and burdens. We are against these decisions. In this regard, we have management on our side, so we hope to work in tandem.
Workers this year are increasingly calling for improvement on work conditions and rehiring of retired workers as Japanese society further grows. How do you hope to help put these calls into action?
Our survey has found that a retiree needs about 260,000 yen a month to pay for all his expenses. But under the government plans, those under the National Corporate Pension Scheme will ultimately not be entitled to receive their premiums till they are 65. Only 30% of those surveyed say they can make ends meet by dipping into their retirement money or savings. The remaining 70% have expressed a desire to keep on working somehow. In April, the revised law for senior workers will come into effect, requiring that all employers raise a mandatory retirement age to 65. This could be done by raising the retirement age or rehiring retired workers and so on. We hope to see that a system for all those who wish to work until they are 65 in their workplace is secured.
Lastly, how will this year's negotiations help place the Japanese economy on a steady recovery path, as well as bring vigor to society?
Our workers have been putting their all into their work to overcome their corporate crisis in the past several years, and they have endured. It's time for management who have been producing results compensate for all their hard work. Employers are in fact beginning to understand the importance of regenerating their workplace. This is because workplaces suffer much tear and wear. We have seen big accidents occur in factory sites and other places in recent years, and they are only the tip of the iceberg, and this is why. Japan lacks natural resources. In order for us to continue to grow, there is a need for our country to nurture human resources, to invest on human resources. Trade unions will continue to negotiate while reflecting the dire needs of workers. We would like management to come to terms with the fact that what makes a company special is the people they breed. This includes part-timers and other non-permanent or atypical workers. Their labor conditions must be in equal terms with permanent employees.
Mr. Kusano, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, that was Mr. Tadayoshi Kusano, Secretary General of the Japanese Trade Union Confederation, interviewed by Mihoko Honda. And this concludes our two-day interview series on this year's labour management negotiations.